Hi everyone, I'm Caroline, and I was with everyone last night. Thanks for joining us again. And yeah, we're excited for tonight. We have a recipe tonight and a lot of fun stuff.
Yoo-hoo! So first I want to express my tremendous gratitude to my Breaking Matzo team, Kim on the phone, Mark and Valeria and Lynn, for pulling together virtual Passover. We did this in about 5 days. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for taking 30 minutes out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight. It's my humble hope that you learn one thing. If one person learns one thing, I can't give you the time back, but hopefully we give you something to bring with you. And I did this last night, but I'm going to do it every night. I just want to say the Shehechianu, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, v'shechianu v'higianu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed art thou, Lord of God, King of the universe, who brings us this unbelievable moment. This is our first series of virtual Passover. For some of you, this is your second one with us. For others of you, this is your first time. And my idea of the Shehechianu is having a sense of adventure on happy and new things, not routine, not sad. Second is to mark the moment, here we are, and then finally to express gratitude. So I'm grateful that we're able to pull this together, got my children here with me, to have all of you here. So that's really a Shehechianu. And I also want to explain and express my deepest prayers and compassion for those here and around the community that are suffering in this COVID-19 environment. I know that it is an extraordinary time and very detailed. And I think that for those that are suffering or know someone that's suffering, we extend our prayers. Our ambition today is just to really stimulate the mind, touch the heart, and uplift the soul. So with that, I'll just give a brief background on, why do we even have Breaking Matzo? How did this all come about? And I think it really comes from my love of Jewish tradition. My parents and my dad may be on the phone tonight, I'm not sure, but my parents, my dad, and my mom instilled a sense of love for Jewish holidays. My mom instilled a love of Jewish cooking, and I have my mom's book here, Judaica, which really has a lot of our family objects. And I was able to take my love for Passover, and what I wanted to do is share it with my kids, and I thought this was a better way. In fact, the way it started is I used to do a new Haggadah every year with my children, and then I would be FedExing it around, and my kids said, hey, they don't want a cookbook, but they'll take social media. So literally March of 2015 is when we launched Breaking Matzo Passover edition, and then now we've expanded to Passover, Hanukkah, Sukkot, Bar Bat Mitzvah, Shabbat, and we're very blessed to have millions of Jews, Christians, and Muslims all over the world sharing in our free content. And our ambition is to stimulate the mind, touch the heart, and uplift the soul by making Jewish home holidays magical, meaningful, and memorable, sharing ideas about food, fun, and philosophy. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some food, some fun, and some philosophy. So the next thing I want to do is talk a little bit about Passover, and why do I enjoy Passover so much? I think it's because Moses did it for the first time, and Jews have been continuously celebrating Passover since then. This year will be a different year, and we'll talk about that later, but I think that I want to make an important mention. Anything you do this year is enough. There are 613 mitzvot in the Torah, 248 do's, and 365 don'ts. There's 248 bones of the body, 365 days of the year. And if you do 0, not good enough. If you do 613, that's unbelievable, maybe a little bit obsessive. So I kind of try to do around 200, 220. And for this Passover, if you do one thing, that's more than enough to celebrate Passover. So I want you to know in any of our recipes and ideas, we've tried to make it easy and accessible. So the story of Passover is about the journey of Hebrew slaves from slavery in Egypt to wandering the wilderness to freedom in the promised land. And as part of that journey, there's so much to talk about. The one thing I will mention is, as a kid, I loved looking for the afikomen, and never once did I find it. Every single year, my older brother Lawrence, who's my best friend, who he was on last night, he found it. And in spite of my afikomen suffering, I learned to really make it fun for my kids. So with that, the thing that we want to talk about to start is the philosophy. We're going to talk about what we do with Breaking Matzo is we celebrate international flavors, people of all over the world, sharing a common purpose, but with different flavors. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, and it's not just with Passover, but with throughout our recipes, is searching around the world where Jews have been in the diaspora, all looking for a connection with a promised land. And we do that by sharing the ritual, but with having our unique twist. So when you go on Breaking Matzah, we now have our 10th Charoset, and Caroline and Lucy are going to show us this year. So we start off with Ashkenazi, which is a pretty common one for Ashkenazi Jews, which is apples, walnuts, honey, and wine. Then we did Spanish Sephardic, because they're Sephardic Jews. And then we did Italian Charoset, which is really delicious. It starts having some fruits. We did a Piedmontese, which actually has a hard-boiled egg and kind of gets like pasty. We did Moroccan, which is one of my favorites. Not that I have a favorite, but that turns into a whole paste, and actually it lasts for weeks. It's almost like a kind or a Cliff Bar, so it's really good for hiking. I came up with Chinese Charoset, which adds soy sauce. I'm bilingual in Japanese, as Lucy. Do you want to say something in Japanese?
Nihon ga daisuki desu. Passover ga daisuki desu.
Lucy loves Japanese. So my first job, I made soy sauce for the prior emperor of Japan, and I actually am responsible for kikkoman soy sauce becoming kosher. I love tangents, but that's another story. So then Indian Charoset we did to huge accolades. Did you know that Jews have lived in India for over 2,800 years? So that's been popular. We did Iraqi, Yemenite, and then tonight, Caroline later on will show you Curacao Charoset. I was in Curacao a little bit ago, and it was amazing to me. I couldn't believe how much I learned in such a short period of time. Basically, the first Jew, Samuel Cohen, came to Curacao in 1634. He was literally an interpreter for a ship to come from the Dutch West India Company. In 1732, Mikveh Temple Emmanuel was built, and it's been there. It remains the oldest continuously operated synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. And it also has the oldest continuously lit menorah every single year for over 300 years. They have 90 members at Mikveh Emmanuel, and then they have another synagogue across the way that has 60 synagogues. It's even on a small island, they need 2 synagogues for the Jewish population, but that's kind of a funny story as well. And then lastly, the remarkable thing is there's all sand on the synagogue floor. So when you walk in there, you literally are at a Caribbean island in the beach while having temple. So that's hopefully a little bit of a stimulating idea. What I want to talk about now is our community question. And so I'm going to read it. Kim's going to open it up for questions. And basically, it's our blog, which are, what are the basics in your life and what are the extras? I think this has even more meaning today. So basically, matzah means to drain out. It has to do with the basics, the essence. And on our site, we have the listing of the ingredients for matzah, which is flour, water, and oil. And then we have the ingredients for hamantashen, challah, and sufgan yot for Hanukkah. And what's amazing is when the Hebrew slaves were getting ready to leave Mitzrayim, Egypt, they only had 18 minutes to make the matzah. So it was really the essence, the most fundamental basics. And as you go from the Passover holiday, we talked about the search for chametz last night, you go from unleavened bread to leavened bread. And that has to do with yeast and a lot of extras. And I think the metaphor is, as we're here looking at the basics in our life, in particular during this unusual time period, the basics become even more meaningful and the extras become even more superfluous. And at the same time, through this spiritual transformation, as our bread leavens, hopefully we can leaven and expand ourselves with a sense of renewed understanding and perspective. So hopefully when we enter Passover, we're like the matzah, focusing on the basics. And through the festival, we can leaven ourselves and our community. So the question is, what is the basics in your life and what are the extras and what's your sense of appreciation? For me, every year we do 10 Charosets. It's unbelievable. This year, I realized we may just do a couple and they'll be even more sweet. And honestly, sometimes in the prior years, I didn't even get to really enjoy or taste all of them. Maybe it was too much. And then the basics for me is to be with my daughters for Thanksgiving. We normally do a large Passover. And this year, just to be with my daughters, that in and of itself is more than enough. So Caroline, Lucy, do you want to add your comment to what's a basic in your life that you've discovered in this period?
I would say being home. I had to go home from college, as many people did, and being home has just made me really appreciate the infrastructure of my life between my parents, my dogs, and my meaningful connections with my friends. And though they may be virtual, I'm as thankful for them now as I've ever been. So I would say those are some necessities that I've come to be really aware of in this crazy day and age.
Thank you, Lucy. Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it sounds redundant, but I think for me it is really similar. Like I talked about a little bit about yesterday, how this time has helped me remind myself to kind of call friends, call family members, talk to my friends on the phone, and that's been a really special time. And I think that for me, that is really the basics, or just like the relationships in your life that bring you a lot of happiness and joy. So
you guys both bring me so much happiness. So Kim, are there questions or that people want to share from our community? What's a basic in your life that you have more appreciation for during this time period?
So again, if someone would like to comment, you can use the chat feature, or you can click on the participant icon and raise your hand, and I can unmute your line if you'd like to comment. I'll give everyone.
Kim, while we're waiting, maybe you can give your answer to see if that gives people some more time.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and you know, I think that this time reminds us that you know, the really important things in our lives right now are what we want to hold on to and protect. And just having everyone safely at home for me, it's really important. And, you know, even in the midst of all this, it's somewhat of a blessing. You have to find the blessing, and the blessing is I'm getting to spend a lot more time with my kids and get to know them better, even though, you know, they're older and, you know, one's away at college. I don't get to have them home as often, and that's really a blessing in disguise.
Thank you. Any comments from the community, Kim?
I don't see anybody.
Okay, so people can.
Stephanie, sorry. Stephanie is chiming in and saying she's thankful for all that she has.
Hooray!
Excellent. Yeah. Well, that is a blessing. So thank you. What we're going to do now is transition. Caroline, you want to take it away on the Charosets, and Lucy?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
Sure. Sure. So thank you, Stephanie, for sharing, and hopefully that was helpful to kind of think through. Like my dad said, we're going to share a recipe on Breaking Matzo. There are a lot of recipes, and I think this is probably one of the favorite things that Lucy and I do together every year. Is no matter where we are, we come home together for Passover and make, as my dad said, a lot of Charosets. So today we're going to tell you about a new recipe.
I was going to say, it feels like every year we're in this kitchen making Charoset. And though our lives are crazy and Caroline works and I'm in college, it kind of feels like no time has passed. We're just back here making Charoset. Caroline takes the lead, I follow in tow as usual. And here we are, ready to make our new exciting recipe, the 10th one.
Yeah, so
let's do this.
All right, so you can find this on breakingmatzo.com. It's Charoset. And basically, this recipe is pretty easy and uses a lot of stuff that you might have in your pantry anyway, especially during this time. You know, we're not really going to the store at all, but we'll walk you through what we have, but there's a lot of substitutions you can make for anything you have in your pantry. So the first thing here is that you want to have we have dates and figs. If you have one or both, doesn't really matter. We soaked them in water to help them soften up a little bit, and now they've been dried. So I'm going to put these in the food processor, and I'll have Lucy kind of hand them to me.
Yeah. Next is some roasted peanuts. Again, something we very much already have in our pantry. You can use flavored, roasted, raw, however, whatever you like.
Yep.
And then next we use some golden sun-made raisins. My personal favorite. Usually raisins might be a common item in the pantry.
Yeah, and like Lucy said, these are golden raisins, but anything you have is fine.
And although we're going to rub them in coconut after, we add some coconut in just for a little extra coconut flavor. And then here we have some orange juice.
We'll be a little careful with these ones. You can use some orange juice that you have, and we're just throwing this all into a food processor, so there's really barely any prep at all.
And then this is the crazy ingredient.
This is some Curacao liqueur. It's blue, as you can see, so it kind of adds some fun. If you don't have this at home, don't even worry about it. You could throw in some Manischewitz or just leave the liquor out.
It matches Lucy's sweater. Look at that. Color
I'm wearing a
coordinated.
Hanukkah sweater. I can't remember if I bring that on Passover. I'm wearing a Hanukkah. And then, of course, a little bit of honey for some extra sweetness.
And for this, I'm going to take one of the breaking matzo spatulas. and
Available
throw
on the
honey.
website.
I'm going to throw the honey in. So after you have everything in the food processor, I'm just going to do it for just a minute or two. It might be a little loud. We do have a mixture pre-made. So basically, you take this in the food processor
Or blender, or whatever.
blender.
Or you can even chop it up and, improvise.
1 second. Perfect. It's pretty easy. After you have everything mixed up in the food processor, you're going to put it in the fridge for 30 minutes. So right now it's kind of all pieced together. You throw it in the fridge for 30 minutes to help it kind of firm up. Luckily, we were prepared. So this is our mixture. It's been in the fridge for 30 minutes. We made this before. And it just helps, like I said, kind of get everything firm so that you can make them into these cute little date balls. So the last step here
Is we coat them in coconut.
is you coat them in coconut. Exactly. So we've gotten just a baking sheet with some parchment paper on it, and then we put our extra coconut shreds all over the sheet. We thought this was easy. You can use a plate, whatever works for you.
Oh,
And then we have this little scooper,
ice cream scooper.
but you can just use a regular
Multifunctional.
spoon. And basically, pretty easy. Lucy, you want to wash your hands, and you can be the one with making a coconut. So you take them in a little spoon, make them they're supposed to be maybe bite-sized, 2 bite size. I'm going to throw them in here. After Lucy washes her hands, she's going to roll each of the balls.
Luckily, we
into
have
the
the
coconut.
antibacterial soap in this coronavirus age.
Yes. So you just make as many. I think this recipe online makes about 25 or 30.
And with your clean hands, you simply rub them in the coconut and boom,
Perfect.
a masterpiece.
Perfect. We've made some of them in advance. So while Lucy rolls them, you can kind of see this is the finished product. And these are actually awesome. You can put them in the fridge and then eat them at your Passover Seder.
They're a healthy snack if you're going to go on a social distant walk with your friends. If you're in California on the hiking trails, throw them in your camelback and there you are.
All right.
So that's our new recipe.
Here you go. You can see they're really. I'm going to pull up here for a zoom. You can see how pretty they are. Can you see that? All right. So
Awesome.
let's go over to our next project.
Great.
Sorry, guys. So we have one question
Yeah.
about the Curacao Charoset. Are they served cold or room temperature? Is there a recommendation?
I think what I would do
A
is
little chill.
I would keep them chilled. I would pull them out pretty close to serving, so they will then get at room temperature. So I wouldn't leave them out all day, but don't worry about getting them to room temperature. But keep them cold as close to serving as possible, and then they'll warm up throughout your Seder. And they're really, really delicious. So guys, go ahead. We're now. I'm gonna try one.
Like my dad said,
Mm,
they're delicious.
delicious.
He
Really,
likes her cooking.
and they're fun because they're a ball. Who's had a ball for a Charoset? So Lucy, Caroline, you want to tell about the fun project, please?
Yeah, so like yesterday, we're gonna also try to kind of share a craft every day that you can do during this time in your house to make this Passover even more special. Do you want to show them that?
Yeah,
Wanna
so
explain
this
it?
is the Passover plate. And if you've ever been to a Passover Seder, you have your own. There are many different interpretations. And of course, there are the classic bitter herbs, shake bone, parsley, horseradish, egg, and charoset. And we like to put an orange on our Seder plate to represent that women can be rabbis as well, from an old saying. And yes, so there's a lot of different creative ways you can go about making your own Seder plate. And
Yeah.
Caroline will explain one.
Yeah, so this is just one way we have on the website. Lucy held up one big plate. You can get any white. You can get any white ceramic plate that you have at home. If you have something like a plate that you don't use often or want to spice up for this holiday, We have some templates online that are kind of cute, but you can just feel free to use anything. There's some different Sharpie markers you can use that will stay on the plate. And so we, like Lucy said, have used some of these templates to make our own. And it's just a fun way, even if you are having a Passover for one, you can have a new Seder plate this year.
We also have these other fun things we've done in the past. Caroline and I wanted to make some fun jewelry, and we said, wait, here are some leather things. And we said we have these stamps that we could write with letters on the leather bracelet that also doubles as a napkin ring. And this one says freedom, this one says Dianu. I think I have one that says Lucy. And you know, the kids find their seats, and then they have a new piece of jewelry that always reminds them of the wonderful Passover Seder that they attended.
So last night we went over this. Lucy, do you remember making this?
I made that when I was 8.
When she was 8, and we use this every year. Thank you.
Yeah,
So let's come
that's
over
the
here.
project for this Seder.
So to the next phase that we want to do, thank you very much, Caroline, Lucy, for a pretty easy recipe. Again, you can substitute any kind of nuts. If you have the curacao liqueur, great. If you don't, no big deal. And you can totally improvise. And all of these crafts, which are on our site, you can order through Amazon. We have all the links. And if you don't have it, just use a paper plate and draw on it for a homemade Seder plate. Get any kind of white dish. Easy. Paint it, use a Sharpie, or just paper plates. And the idea is you can put something in your Seder. When Moses was in the wilderness, they didn't order from Amazon, but they made Seder special enough that we keep doing it thousands and thousands of years. So, you know, in my view, tradition is repetitive action with meaning, and you have to reinvent and take the old and the new and adapt to help it be meaningful to you, and this will be an unusual year. So I think that it's actually, you know, from my standpoint, one thing that we're trying to do is to make Jewish history this week. So Moses celebrated the first Seder in the wilderness during the 40 days after leaving Mitzrayim, Egypt, from slavery. And Jews and many people, but I'm speaking of the biblical tradition, of having the youngest person at the table read the 4 questions. So Passover Seder has been an intergenerational celebration for thousands of years. This is one of the few times that in many homes there won't be intergenerational participation. So while the bar bat mitzvah does have a minimum age by ritual, not by biblical or Talmudic law, of 13 or older, but a minimum of 13, there's no minimum age or maximum age for the 4 questions. So in history, the average age of the person reading the 4 questions is probably around 8 or 9. But this year, due to social distancing and the circumstances we're in, there'll be many people who are singing them in their 40s or 50s or 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. So what we want to do is make Jewish history, and through Breaking Matzo on our Facebook page, please send us your singing of the 4 questions of all ages, and we're going to make an a cappella singing montage. We just got our first singing version in from Israel, from my uncle who's a rabbi in Israel. So we're really excited about that, to find the blessing in this journey. I did talk about this last night. This is my cookbook that came together, and it's called Magical, Meaningful, and Memorable. It has my family here, up here. You can see my dad if he's on the phone, and my brothers and my mom. And then this is, you know, for me, I was able to dedicate it to my mom, who taught me a lot of the recipes, and my daughters at Caroline's bat mitzvah. And then this is my family celebrating Passover last year all together. We were supposed to be, you know, together this year or next year or in the future, but this year it'll be just the 3 of us. And anyway, it's a really great opportunity. So, you know, with that, I want to ask him if there's any other comments or questions that we have out there.
I'm not seeing anything. If anyone has any final, someone is waving to me. Panina, hold on. I'll get you. I'll unmute you. Okay, you're on.
Shalom. Can the Chumash be? Can it be frozen can the little balls be frozen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think definitely after you put the coconut, you wouldn't want to freeze them before putting the coconut on because the coconut might not stick. But after you make them and they're wrapped in the coconut, you could definitely freeze them for a couple of days until your Seder. Great question.
Oh,
There's nothing that can go bad in it because it's just
Right,
dates,
right.
figs, raisins, peanuts, honey, orange juice, liqueur. So it will kind of last almost forever. I wouldn't recommend that. And I assure you, based on how well they taste, they won't last forever.
okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
So one thing I just want to mention that I mentioned last night, but I think it's pretty meaningful. When we have our Seder, we're doing a virtual Seder on Wednesday. And we'll talk about the story of the plagues, which has a tremendous amount of meaning. I could go on, and I usually do, but I won't tonight because we have a time limit. But the idea of this COVID-19 during Passover, it is a plague. And it's particularly appropriate and meaningful in literally a biblical transformation way that I believe it's on Passover. If it had been on Sukkot, the festival of abundance, or enhancing and exacerbating the darkness during Hanukkah, during the winter solstice, I think that there is something to really learn from that. And this plague is impacting everyone on the planet. While individually we may respond differently based on our own personal health or circumstances, the idea that this plague is impacting the whole planet, it is a planet plague. And when we talk on Wednesday about the plagues, they did impact everyone in Egypt, Hebrews and Egyptians. And the journey to freedom was available to all of them. And actually, many Egyptians joined many Hebrew slaves in becoming Israelites. It wasn't exclusively Hebrew slaves that became Israelites, and not all Egyptians stayed behind. The point is, the journey to freedom is available to everyone if you have faith and hope and a commitment to expanding your soul based on biblical traditions of the Passover, going from the basics to the extras. So with that, I've been more than grateful for you giving us 30 minutes of your time. I hope you got one
Sorry,
thing.
Andy, before you do that nice close, Daphne has a question or comment, I think. Daphne?
Yes, thank you guys. Chag Sameach. I have a really quick question about the figs. My husband and I, sorry, I have a question about the figs in the recipe. So my husband and I have a tree in our yard. We don't know what the variety is, but do you guys have any thoughts on the variety of fig? Do you think it matters?
No.
I think that's awesome. If you have a fig tree, I would definitely use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters at all because it's all about just using the natural ingredients and having that sweetness. So I'm sure any sort of fig from your fig tree would do the job.
Sounds
Okay,
awesome.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Yeah.
So
Thank
with
you.
that, I'm going to give you all
wait.
1 minute back.
We still have more questions.
Oh,
Elaine has a question, so hold up. I'm going to unmute Elaine. Elaine? I can't seem to unmute Elaine. Okay, sorry, Elaine. If you want to type it in, then we'll get you after. Sorry to interrupt, Andy. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to give everyone a minute back and end a minute early. But
Great.
if there's people asking questions, we're happy to stay.
Yeah, no, Elaine was waving, but I can't seem to unmute her line. I don't see anything else in the chat panel.
thank you.
Thank you very
Elaine.
much for everyone. Chag Sameach. Prepare for Passover. We'll be back tomorrow night, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, breakingmatzo.com, and with Kim. So with that, stay safe, stay secure. Chag Sameach.
Bye.
Chag
Thank you.
Sameach.